Hi everyone, my name is Beth. I'm a librarian at the Weinberg Library in Mequon, and today is April 13th, which would normally mean that we would be having our first meeting of the Slice and Share Cooking Club. But since we can't meet in person, I figured I would bring it to you virtually. So I'm going to be making a soup today called Francie's Black Bean Soup. I got the recipe from the Max Fun Family Cookbook, and I have adapted it for my Instant Pot Duo Nova. And I've posted both the Instant Pot version of the recipe and the regular version of the recipe in the description below. Now the first thing I need for this recipe is 2 cans of black beans, liquid and all. I also need 1.5 cups of sofrito, and I am using tomato sofrito, so the Spanish version. I've never tried this with Puerto Rican sofrito, which features culantro instead of tomato. I imagine it would work fine, but I am using the tomato base. Then I need a tablespoon of olive oil, which I have put inside my pan. I have a small yellow onion, which I have diced. You can use a large white or yellow onion if you'd prefer. I'm not a huge fan of onion flavor, so I always go with the small. Next up, I have 2 tablespoons of cumin, a 1/4 teaspoon pepper and salt, 1/2 teaspoon cayenne pepper, a tablespoon of Tabasco chipotle pepper sauce, 3 medium red potatoes, which I've cubed, and 2 whole carrots, which I've peeled and diced. Now, if you would prefer that this soup be savory and sweet rather than spicy, you can cut down on the amount of cayenne and Tabasco sauce, or you can omit them entirely. It's up to you. If you don't have Tabasco chipotle pepper sauce specifically, you can probably use any hot sauce, or you can seed and mince a jalapeno pepper and add that. And then last, I have a green bell pepper, which I have chopped up, and underneath it are 2 ribs of celery, which I've peeled and diced. And then finally, I have 2 cups of vegetable stock, which I've made from the Better Than Bouillon No Chicken base. So this is a vegetarian stock that tastes like chicken stock. Now I have made this recipe with chicken stock before, so if you'd prefer to do that, you can. I tried to keep this as vegetarian as possible, and I say as possible because looking at the ingredients on the sofrito, I realized that it has bacon fat. So this is not vegetarian or vegan. However, if you made your own sofrito or you found a jarred or canned or frozen version without bacon fat or any other animal products in it, this can be a vegetarian and a vegan recipe. Okay, so now the first thing I actually need to do is I need to puree together 1 can of black beans with the liquid and the jar of sofrito. I'm going to do that off camera though, so that I don't subject you to my blenders screaming. So I'll be right back. All right, I'm back and I have my sofrito puree. You can see it's a lovely orange color. Now I'm actually going to set this aside for a moment because I don't need it right now. I just didn't want to be playing with blenders while I was working on this. So now I'm going to saute my onions until they are softened. And if you know anything about the saute feature on the Instant Pot, you know that it is serious business. It turns up the heat really high. You can't control the level of the heat, and it does cook things really fast. Using the Instant Pot is the only time that I've ever actually been able to cook onions in about 5 minutes. Typically it takes longer in a skillet, so I'm going to want to move quickly once I've got this going. So let's get started. So I'm actually going to set it to saute for 6 minutes, and that will start heating up our oil in the next couple of seconds. And then once that's ready, I will add our onions. That's my signal that it has started sauteing. So I'm just waiting for this to just start to shimmer. I just want my oil to be shimmering. If it gets too hot too fast, the onions will burn. So we got to be very careful with this. So that isn't quite shimmering, but it's nice and loose, and that's really what I want. So we don't want to overcook our onions. We don't want to start burning things. So let's go ahead and add these to the pot, hopefully without too much of sizzle. Yeah. right, so that's all set. Now I'm going to move these around pretty consistently and constantly because I don't want them to stick. And what I'm looking for is for them to get nice, translucent, and soft, which should just take a few minutes. Okay, so my saute timer hasn't quite gone off yet, but I'm sure it will soon. These look pretty much the way I want them to at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and add my spices, my potatoes, and my carrots. There we go. Get all of that in there. And now I'm going to stir this together, making sure that it doesn't stick to the bottom of the pot. And what I want is for my vegetables to become a little bit soft, which they should do pretty quickly because we're dealing with a pretty hot pan. If your saute feature has finished at this point and you want to restart it for a couple of minutes to keep the heat up, you can. But honestly, with the carryover cooking, I usually find that I don't need to keep running the saute. I can just let this go. So I'm just going to keep stirring these around. What I want, like I said, is for them to soften up just a little bit, which will take a couple of minutes. So now that I'm seeing just a little bit of flexibility in my carrots and a little bit of yield in my potatoes, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next step. So now I'm going to add in my green bell pepper and my celery. There we go. Mix that around a little bit so that they're all distributed. And then I'm going to add my vegetable stock in here. Perfect. I will stir this and make sure I scrape up all the good spices on the bottom really well. Make sure that's all incorporated into the stock, and make sure that nothing is sticking to the bottom of the pan. Because if it starts to stick while it's pressure cooking, it will start to burn, and that will make the pressure cooker shut itself off and lengthen our cooking time, which we don't really want. Next, it comes time for my sofrito puree, so we'll add that in. Excellent. Make sure I get everything out of the blender. Don't want to leave any of this good flavor behind. Mix that slightly. And then the very last step I have to do is add my last can of black beans, again liquid and all, to the mix. So we get some of that bean texture and flavor. All right, now I'm going to mix this all together, make sure it's mixed really well. At this point, the pot in my Instant Pot is almost half full. So we're almost at that 3-quart point. Okay, that looks good. So now I'm going to go ahead, put my lid on, and I'm going to lock it with that nice jingling sound. That means that I've got it. Now that my lid is on, I am going to set this to pressure cook for 10 minutes. And if you know anything about the Instant Pot, you know that it actually is going to take a little bit longer than that. It takes 10 or 15 minutes to come up to pressure to build up enough steam in the pot to start cooking. Then it's going to cook for 10 minutes and then the timer will go off and we'll check back. So I'm going to go kill about 20 minutes, probably by doing some dishes, and I'll see you in a moment. And we're back. So my timer has gone off. I let this sit for 5 minutes so it could naturally release some of its steam, but I don't want to let it sit for too long because it will continue to cook as long as there's steam inside of the pot. So I'm going to use the quick release valve on the top of the pot to let all of the steam out at once. I'm going to step aside before I do that because it's going to come out of a spout right here and I don't want it to hit my face or burn me. 1, 2, 3. Took a couple minutes, so I did cut out some of the time. Now I'm going to carefully turn my lid so it's open. And then I'm going to lift it away from me and hopefully away from you as much as I can. There's still going to be some steam. I'm going to let that liquid run off into the pot. Okay, set this down. While we were cooking, I got a food burn warning, and the Instant Pot turned itself off for a couple of minutes to let that subside, which to me just suggests that my beans have stuck a bit to the bottom of the pot. They like to do that. So if you see that too, don't panic. It will subside once the pot cools off a little bit. But I am going to scrape the bottom now to make sure I get everything off. And that is it. It's soup. I will say that cooking it in the Instant Pot makes a little bit more of a watery broth. The regular recipe calls for about 20 minutes of simmering. The Instant Pot traps the water inside, so the broth does stay a little runnier. But it's spicy, it's good, it's healthful. I enjoy it, and I've enjoyed making it for you. Again, the recipe is in the description, both the Instant Pot version and the regular version. My contact information is at the top of the recipe, so if you have questions, feel free to let me know. If you'd like to tell me about your experience making the soup, let me know. Thank you for joining me. Hopefully the next time I see you, it'll be in person, but if not, I'll be here.